Heading for Outer Space, Case for Astropolitics, Part 1 by Jacek Bartosiak, Strategy&Future, May 5th, 2020. Control of outer space means control of the world. Lyndon B. Johnson, January 1959, at a meeting of the United States Senate Armed Forces Committee when he was its vice president. The universe is an ocean. The moon is the Diao Islands, Senkaku. Mars is Hyungang Island, Scarborough Shoal. If we don't go there now, even though we are capable of doing so, then we will be blamed by our descendants. If others go there, then they will take over and you won't be able to go even if you wanted to. This is reason enough. Zhe Peizhang, head of the Chinese moonflight program. The COVID-19 pandemic will eventually pass. Earlier, it will change the world, having plowed global value chains and inevitably change the principles of globalization of the last 30 years. But eventually it will pass. A new era will emerge. When I write these words, locked down by the decision of the Polish government in the beautiful scenery of Warmia, exactly on the route of the winter campaign of Napoleon of 1806 and 07, the pandemic and above all its economic and social effects seem to be causing the acceleration of the Chinese-American competition for world domination. It is reminiscent of the lightning before the storm that illuminates the battlefield. The battlefields for global power are now globalized value chains and the resulting global division of labor in a global economy. Their control gives real structural power and the possibility of imposing the will on others. This is the key to understanding the essence of geopolitical domination, formally enforced by regional powers in their spheres of influence. After Carl Schmitt, we called those areas Großräume. And after the collapse of the Soviet Union by the global superpower, the United States, the Earth's hegemon of the last 30 years of globalization with the US King Dollar, the Navy, aircraft carriers, global power projection, GPS, Google, Apple, Amazon, and Silicon Valley, the New York Stock Exchange, Hollywood, the World Bank, and the International Monetary Fund. The history of our planet proves that the one who has the most to say is the one that sets the rules and makes use of them. The global status in the global economy relates to real decisions regarding the division of labor in global production chains, services, and creating added value. The principles of strategic flows, their prices, places, and directions, the currency in which they occur, the places and goals of investments, technological cycles or new scientific breakthroughs, and regulatory regimes. The most important element of structural power in the global economy is traditionally the result of the technological advantage gained, which is a source of great profit and powerful status, which can be called simply modernization. Technology creates new economies, closing the old technology cycle and old connections between people and companies. It is the technology and the potential profits resulting from it that change the paradigm of previous functioning by breaking the resistance of those who are well vested in the old model. It gives great advantages to the first one who invested and succeeded. It changes the status quo by altering the balance of power. The mastery of fire, agriculture, domestication and breeding of horses, the first manufacture, gunpowder, the emergence of innovativeness of the European economy after the great epidemic of Black Death, navigation technologies enabling deep ocean sailing in the open Atlantic created new economies, pushing the old system into oblivion. The Industrial Revolution, the steam engine, the internal combustion engine, aviation, metallurgy, and the Internet put Western countries at the top of the international hierarchy, always measured by the power. You can't delude yourself that something else mattered eventually. It was the West's modernization ability that drove it to the top status. That is why the West has been a role model for others who wanted to change the leaders and make up for lost time. Whoever modernized took part in the civilization race, whoever did not do so fell out of it, which ended with the partitions or colonization of the victim. This is what happened to the former Polish-Lithuanian Commonwealth and to China. In this way, modernization is a great geopolitical effort to match or overtake the efforts of others and remain in a game that could have a lengthy, though honest name. History never ends and this race has no finish. Technological changes resulting in economic changes are followed by social and political reforms in order to support the optimal model of functioning of the state organism. Poland's constitution of 3rd of May was just such a great geopolitical leap towards modernization, on the verge of modernity. Also, as not to fall out of the course of history, we did not succeed and we still pay the price today. Poor and peripheral England mastered technology, built a fleet, and optimized its location on the exit of all sea routes from Europe to the open Atlantic. And technology defeated its competitors in turn for profits from the new economy and finally controlled the world. China did not do this because in the 15th century they made the wrong geostrategic decision, destroying their own fleet, exploring the Indian Ocean and the coast of Africa, defending in good faith the old paradigm in which many key Chinese decision-makers were simply comfortable. A bad geostrategic decision is ruining an act of modernization and leading to the collapse of one's own civilization, which over time turns out to be inefficient enough to persevere in the course of history. Like the world, epidemics and wars have accelerated the modernization effort of those who were ambitious in the past. Competitive by nature, we mobilize ourselves, creating amazing deposits of energy. This creates great works and changes to the old model, a departure from the old paradigm. British rudder, the American electron brain and atomic bomb, German ballistic missiles, these are all the fruits of the last World War. Amazing, but even the program of Sputnik and manned flights to the moon are the fruits of this terrible war, specifically the German ballistic missile program V2 and its father, Werner von Braun, later the brain of the American Apollo program. The Cold War intensified technological competition. Powers competed on the so-called demonstrating capabilities whose subsequent breakthroughs were determined by technology: rockets, airplanes, radars, ships, optics, integrated circuits, microchips, space flights, nuclear and thermonuclear weapons. You can name it endlessly. When at the turn of the 1970s and 80s it was already visible that the Soviets had lost, the Americans began to let go. They stopped flying manned missions to the moon, contenting themselves in flights to an easy-to-reach low orbit of the Earth, possibly not even spectacular or innovative robot missions. With the help of old but improved technology from the 60s and 70s, the era of globalization had arrived. Fukuyama announced the end of history. You could just make money. Markets that had not been covered by the Bretton Woods system or WTO standards became new exploration areas. We had reached a blissful period of the unipolar moment or unipolar Western concert, and the supremacy of the United States on the globe and the role of the Western socio-economic model. The end of the competition, however, brought a powerful strategic tether. Certainly when it came to space penetration, Kishore Mahbubani in his recently published book Has China Won? Proves that the Americans have made a great strategic mistake, and with them, the entire West. Exactly when China was waking up, they went to bed to sleep, believing Fukuyama. They allowed several 100 million Chinese people, almost costless labor, into the capitalist system of the global economy, which they themselves had created and breathed life into. Now they bear this consequence by breaking the world they created. Killing your own creation with a sense of having been cheated must create a dangerous emotional mix that will accompany Americans in this coming hegemonic clash with China. When it comes to space exploration, not much has happened since collapse of the Soviet Union. Extremely attractive in media, space shuttle journeys proved to be an inefficient means of launching into space. The Americans got stuck in low Earth orbit, becoming dependent on transport to the International Space Station from others. NASA has become a symbol of bureaucratic and expense overgrowth. During Obama's term, ideas emerged for its complete elimination and the closure of the space program. No significant competition, no vision, not to mention the launch of a new project on a scale similar to the Manhattan Project, Apollo program, or Eisenhower nuclear triad. These were real modernization efforts and were changing the world, consolidating US edge in the competition for the future of mankind. Especially since the threshold price, financial and technological, for entering space is high enough that only great powers can afford it. All the more you need great visions, great strategies, and meanwhile, the symptom of the US failure is the SLS launch rocket developed by NASA. Extremely expensive one time, meaning you can't reuse it. Inefficient, it mainly serves congressmen from Georgia and Alabama to maintain the socio-economic model in their constituencies, where people are employed in factories. The above example is a symptom of the structural weakness of superpowers political system bursting by this kind of particularism. And this is when Elon Musk and his visionary SpaceX have to pay for takeoffs from American spaceports, and no one else does it from there. It is comforting only that Elon Musk may be the new Columbus, and his competitor in the race for space from Blue Origin, Jeff Bezos, the new Vasco da Gama. Like these two, the former explorers, and behind them a multitude of nameless daredevils and risk-takers broke the old paradigm, and certainly did not have it easy. And constant financial shortages ridiculed that act. Change generates shock, so people don't like change. In addition, the vision of the end of history and the supposed end of geopolitical competition that accompanied humanity since its beginnings has always seemed to confirm the final victory of liberalism. That this victory was mainly due to technological dominance of the West and the promise of the modernization project that followed somehow escaped the perceptions. Instead, the vision of beautiful relations between people tied their hands, especially Americans, to bolder actions in space. It turned out that the words sound beautiful, that the cosmos and its boundless possibilities and resources are the heritage of all mankind, thus restraining public investment and major private investment that would finance space explorations. Because who will pay for them and who will benefit from the fruits of exploration? A seemingly beautiful reflex leads to a systemic tether, just like it was in England before Cromwell with the regulation of so-called commons and grazing and subsequent turmoil of fencing and closures, which ended in the social revolution. Or how it was on Earth with the exploration of the seas and oceans, to which the cosmos is structurally, from the point of view of use and control, very similar. Only great powers have spacefaring capabilities. Countries without it resemble those that are landlocked. In the era of power rivalry, such states could not freely use it. They could only during periods when there was one hegemon of the basin, and he was an arbiter of the principles on which movement in the basin was made. There is currently no single arbitrator in space, at least yet. Does anything else need to be added for the intelligent and smart reader? Similar discussions took place during the great discoveries of the world ocean. Who owns the discovered lands and their fruits, and on what principles is the world ocean used? Who owns the Atlantic and the communication lines of the new economy? Such debates always end the same way. Power decides, and the victorious power imposes its will to become the arbiter of the new economy. Great Britain played such a game in phases and truly masterfully with Trafalgar as a last touch of the grand vision. In the age of recent globalization, we wanted to believe in the West that the course of history can't be controlled and tamed, that people have changed, and that this time will definitely be different. It will not. In December 2019, the Americans created Space Force. As President Donald Trump said in the decision to establish American Space Force, space is the world's new warfighting domain. Amid great threats to our national security, American superiority in space is absolutely vital, and we are leading, but we are not leading by enough, and very shortly we will be leading by a lot. The Space Force will help us deter aggression and control the ultimate high ground. As Trump added in further remarks, the essence of the American character is to explore new horizons and to tame new frontiers. But our destiny beyond the Earth is not only a matter of national identity, but a matter of national security. So important for our military, so important, and people don't talk about it. When it comes to defending America, it is not enough to merely have an American presence in space. We must have American dominance in space. Thus, it is the United States that is to be the guardian of the new world ocean, the arbiter of the principles on which space travel and strategic flows of people, goods, investments, technology, data, and knowledge are to be carried out. To this end, Americans want to control the cross projection from space to Earth and beyond, from Earth's orbits into space, and at the same time control Earth observation systems and communications to Earth and further into space. The competition between the US and China will be completely incompatible to anything before. and awakened China as a great power. When the Americans became a powerful country, China basically did not exist as a major state, colonized and dictated to by foreign powers. Never in history has there been a powerful China and a powerful United States on planet Earth. I have even met the world alarmist voices that there is no place on Earth for both at the same time. When European powers were fighting for dominance in Europe and the discovery of new routes across the Atlantic to America and Asia around Africa created a new economy, they consumed that they acquire resources to fight for dominance over their old native world, that is Europe. In the coming battle for supremacy over the Earth and its globalized economy, the center of gravity of existing value chains and existing technologies will quickly be stuck in stalemate, looking like Flanders fields of 1914 and 1918. Thus, competition, the natural reflex of looking for new fields and domains, will jump to future value chains and future technologies that will create industry and production in the 21st century. 5G, AI, 3D printing, distributed production, space production, a vacuum, cheap and unlimited solar energy, communication from space to Earth, exploration of space resources, etc. The new economy is traditionally created from a breakthrough based on access to new raw materials, new production technologies, and new connectivity. Space exploration promises them all at once. The new race will concern the new economy, but the condition for this is military domination. In fact, one enables the other. And in space, there is no prize for second place. Whoever gets access control may deny access to other. One must not delude yourself. Neither side will give up without a fight. The Americans will certainly fight the battle. I currently see no room for accommodation in America's current socio-economic model. They will not listen to the warnings of Kissinger, who is afraid of confrontation with China, nor will they listen to Kishore Mahbubani from Singapore, a colleague of the legendary creator of Singapore, late Lee Kuan Yew. Kishore believes that Americans must adapt to the power of China because US has already lost the fight. The Chinese will not give up either. Accepting Washington's demands would be considered as agreeing to new unequal treaties that led to the aid of humiliation of Great China by foreign powers. China has the right to growth, especially since the last 40 years is probably the best period of the 4,000 years of the history of the Middle Kingdom. So why change anything? Especially when demanded to do so by a country that has been around for only 250 years, which from a Chinese perspective means only a short while. James Carafano of the influential Washington Heritage Foundation heralds with joy, in his last text, the breakup of cooperation with China, divorce of the global supply chain, and division of the world into spheres of influence. North America in one zone, with Europe facing the Atlantic, and with East Asia, this sea-oriented, in one camp, and China and their allies in another, with a battle zone in between them, using the poetics of Sławomir Dębski from the Polish Institute of International Affairs. If I understand it correctly, with Poland as an advanced western stronghold facing the great landmass of Eurasia consolidated by the power of China. Andrew Michtab from the American think tank, the German Marshall Fund, postulates the need for a hard decoupling and a detachment from supply chains to cooperation with China, and Wes Mitchell, who was responsible in the State Department for European Affairs in Eurasia, including the affairs of our region between the Baltic and the Black Sea, wags a finger at the countries of our region and orders them to make an immediate choice for America, ordering the end of economic cooperation in China. By default, because you will not be in the American zone. Although I personally know and value them all, this confrontation with China will be more complicated than those Americans think. Although, in opposition to the recommendation of the famous Singaporean, the Americans will take this fight and the war will be fought. We have been saying on Strategy and Future for a long time that this time is coming. Time to fasten your seat belts.